There was a lot of good and a little bit of bad from Saturday. Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back into Locked On Bama, AHSA's radio network. Luke Robinson, that's me. Bama Online's Jimmy Stein, that's him. And this episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. I'll tell you about 5 Hour Energy in just a bit. I want to thank all you everydayers for joining us every day and all you newbies. Hey, appreciate you. Jimmy, a lot of good and a lot of bad from this weekend. The good, of course, is that we win 42-16. And, hey, we'll take it. Right?
That's good.
Very good. And the other good news is you win that big and you still have a lot to learn from. I find that to be a positive. The other thing we should mention, and while we talk about the offensive line problems, and we'll get to those, is that the offensive line problems were also partially due to injury and people being out, and there was some shuffling. So, and I want to also say one other thing. We talked about the fumble that Jalen had under center. I want to give a shout out to Randy Hunt at RD Hunt 87, who said the reason for the fumble, Jalen raised his right foot before the snap to signal the H-back to shift across the formation. When nothing happened, Jalen repeated the signal and was not ready for the snap. So, I guess my one question is, well, why was it snapped? Because I would think that Jalen would have to give some kind of – but anyway, that makes more sense to me and gives it – I guess for whatever reason that makes me feel better. I don't know why. But some of the good, let's start off with that because that's how you do in a good management technique is you do good, bad, then good again. And, the good is, look, Jalen Milroe is the first quarterback in Alabama history to throw for 2 touchdowns and run for 2 touchdowns in consecutive games. I mean, that's pretty awesome. Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
Well, it's crazy that it hasn't been done before. I mean, for one thing, I think it's also crazy.
By Hurts. You would think Hurts would have done that.
It's also crazy that, the kid gets so criticized online from Alabama fans, social media, that while he's setting records, and it's sort of just silly, I guess, what's expected is some degree of perfection that's just, I don't know. I guess this is what happens when you have Jalen and then Tua and then Bryce and Mac Jones, all right in a row. I guess this is a big part of it. But regardless of what some think, Jalen is one of the most dynamic quarterbacks in all of college football. He's far from perfect. He's far from a finished product. Let's remember, this was what, off the top of my head, this was start 16 of his career. Start 16. I mean, this is a kid – and soon I want to do a whole show or at least a whole spiel on what I call developmental arc, because I think everyone would enjoy college football if they had a greater understanding of developmental arc and what that means. So what it means in simplest terms, we won't go over it now. What it means in simplest terms is, hey, one day Wilkin Formby's probably going to be a really good football player. One day Jalen Milroe is going to be better than he was even this past Saturday and better than he's been at the best moments you've seen so far. Because these kids are at an age playing a sport where their best is yet to come. This is true for so many of them, not 100% of them, but so many of them, and particularly guys with big upside. Who are guys with big upside? I don't know. Wilkin Formby, Jalen Milroe, that's 2 guys. So we just have to understand what the developmental arc is and that better times are coming for both kids. And both kids have done so far is pretty amazing. It's pretty funny now. Try to find a guy online, an Alabama fan, that doesn't want Elijah Pritchett to be the starting right tackle this weekend. If you'd have said a week before the season started, who do you want at right tackle, Formby or Pritchett? You'd get 100-0 Formby.
That is so true.
0 Formby. Why? Because you'd seen Pritchett not play well in the past.
And you had heard practice reports that Pritchard was getting abused. You had heard, I had heard those. And I mean, people were like, man, he gets whipped. I mean, we got to play Formby. Formby's doing so much better. Well, you don't know, when the lights come on, some things can be different. The pressure's on you. And so I feel like, look, but I'm with you. This is not, again, not taking another shot at Formby. I'm trying to spin this as a good thing. that Formby's going to learn from this. And I'd much rather learn from a 42-16 win than a 19-18 loss.
Yeah, I mean, Peyton Manning in the NFL as a rookie threw more interceptions than any quarterback in the history of NFL football. I know there's a lot of Manning haters in the Alabama fandom, but does anybody out there consider Peyton Manning a bad quarterback? I mean, he's on the short list of the greatest of all time. And again, once he got in the NFL, he developed into the Super Bowl winning quarterback and the MVP of the league. He developed into that. College is the same way, but even more so. Even more. Those kids, they're 18, 19, in Ryan's case, 17. They're 18, 19, 20 years old. They're literally very young players for the first time playing at a really high level of the sport. And there's going to be some rough moments. And none of this is an excuse, by the way, over how Alabama generally played Saturday. I'm rewatching the game right now and writing my thoughts up on BOL. And I can tell you from the rewatch, it's very frustrating because there is so much good play. But Alabama played that whole first half what I call uphill, meaning that they made the field longer than 100 yards. Everything was more difficult, partly because of South Florida and how good they are. They do have talented, very aggressive athletes. But the penalties, the errors, the holds, and every now and then you got whipped. I mean, Formby got beat a couple times. People talk about the holds. He also got beat a few times, which I find more concerning, when he just flat out got beat. So you got to improve. But look, Alabama did 1 year ago, same circumstance.
All right, now I want to talk about something that's bad, but it's going to sort of morph into good. The bad part. Alabama has the 10th most penalty yards in FBS, with some of the teams ahead of them having played 3 games already. That comes from that guy at shooters_guy_TJ. Appreciate him throwing that stat to us and listening. That's awful. Here's where I'm going to tell you, I think that I'm not where I think the good news is, at least the good news relative to that. I don't think it's due to being undisciplined. I don't think that's what it is. And first, when you hear about that many penalty yards, your first thought is, man, Alabama's so undisciplined, and that's a reflection on the coach. I don't think that's the case. I think it's more some of the penalties have been holding, which were on Formby, which some of them are warranted. If you check Twitter, a couple of them weren't.
One in particular was egregious.
It was terrible. It was a terrible call.
One where the South Florida guy fell to the ground. He fell to the ground. At no point in that play did Formby hold anything.
Right. Then, when you think about Justin Jefferson's 15-yard penalty for targeting, which, in my opinion, was not the right call. Again, people say letter of the law, but I mean, come on, that was pretty much a form tackle. So my point is, I think all this is correctable, is what I'm trying to say. Right. And I feel like that's a positive. Now, there were some other negatives we could throw in there, like the DBs getting toasted a few times, but just South Florida's inability to complete that pass. Okay, but going to finish it up with something good, and that's just Hollywood Williams. I put him in the thumbnail because I'm so fired up about it. I'm so excited you and I were right about him. I'm so excited.
We did. It wasn't a leap on our part. I mean, we weren't the only ones. But yeah, we definitely, Ryan has justified our summer of Ryan Williams on the show. I mean, he certainly has done that. Here's another thing that stood out to me on the rewatch. It gets to what Luke's talking about, those penalties. Formby was called for a hold, which was a hold on the Milroe touchdown run. When Milroe ran it 60, 70, 80 yards, it was a spectacular play by Jalen, because that was an RPO. Not only did he make the right decision on the RPO, he really showed his athleticism there, the burst and the long speed. It was jaw-dropping SportsCenter stuff, right? And he gets called back because of a hold again. We've had now several plays wiped out during the course of the game because of penalty. The next snap, we gave up a sack or a really bad play. And you could watch across the board from Booker at left tackle all the way to Formby at right tackle. They all had a poor block on the next play. I think that made them, understandably, look, I'm scared to touch these. There's a flag coming when I engage with my guy. there's a flag coming, and we as a group are ruining this game for the offense. And I just want to get out of here and hide. I mean, the next snap was just abysmal. And it was a complete reaction to what does Nick Saban used to always say, play the next play. Forget the last play, play the next play. They did not. They did not on that snap. They totally relived the form behold on the prior snap. And no one got a good block there on that next play. And Milroe got sacked and the whole series just went to pot. Well, that's what we're talking about in terms of how these are kids at a developmental age. When things go bad and let's pick out an elementary school word here, doo-doo. When the doo-doo starts rolling downhill, it's hard to stop it. It's hard to stop it at that age. They just sort of panic. And that's what I felt was going on with Wilk and with really a lot of the offensive line. Gino Vandermark also in his first start in the SEC.
Not good.
It wasn't great. The only offensive lineman I've seen that I was reasonably impressed with Booker because he's playing a new spot. He didn't play, by the way, as good as I would say Booker normally plays, but he did fine at left tackle. And Brailsford was pretty consistent at center in terms of getting his guy blocked. I don't think it was a good game at all for Roberts. And of course, we know Wilkin, that was a total disaster. And Vandermark wasn't good either. We're going to be so well served when we get Proctor back. I hope that's this Saturday. I hear conflicting things. I'm optimistic he's back this Saturday. Again, I hear conflicting things, so we'll see.
Some more good news, just to let you know how far this podcast has come. When we clearly would have said an expletive years ago, Jimmy substituted doo-doo. We appreciate that.
Good? Yeah. You're welcome, kids.
All right, let me tell you about 5 Hour Energy. Look, I love 5 Hour Energy. I needed it for the Bama game. I needed it yesterday because I was tired from the day before because I stayed up way too late and then did several podcasts and all those things. But 5 Hour Energy fixes tired fast, whether you have a long list to do for work or you have all these DIY projects you want to tackle at home. Take a 5 Hour Energy shot so you can check off everything on your to-do list. If you're like me, you always got a large list of projects. Man, I really do. 5 Hour Energy shots give you the feeling of alertness and energy you need to get in the zone. The zone. With zero sugar and a convenient portable size, it's the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. The 5 Hour Energy website has flavors like watermelon, tropical burst, grape, berry, all these kind of flavors, and they're all delicious. On the site, you have the option to even build your own 12 or 24-pack. You choose the flavors, and it's delivered right to your door. 5 Hour Energy is the brand hard-working people like you have trusted for 20 years. Look, if you go to 5hourenergy.com, that's the number 5hourenergy.com, and get some 5 Hour Energy products today, you can use my promo code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid through September 30th, so hurry on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Go to 5 Hour Energy, that's the number 5hourenergy.com today.
I can't hear you.
You can't because I was muted.
Out of a commercial break. God. Flag.
I know.
10 yards.
10 yards. I got a lot to work on too, Jimmy. I got a lot
10
to work
yards.
on. I want to remind everybody to go check out some of the other Locked On shows. We're going to be doing a Locked On crossover with Locked On Badgers here sometime this week. I don't know when. Looking forward to that. So we're going to find out some things to do while in Madison, Wisconsin, because for some dumb reason we're playing this game at 11 o'clock in the morning. And so I'm going to have a whole afternoon to kill because there's no other good games on Saturday.
Yeah, I like Fox's big noon kickoff. I like the concept. I like the fact that at 11 o'clock a.m. Central Time, there is a big game to start our day. I like it with one exception. When Alabama's in it. I do like that. But I do like this past weekend, Michigan and Texas kicking off at 11 o'clock. I like it. And the week before, Georgia and Clemson kicked off 11. I realized that's not Fox. Fox had on Penn State, West Virginia, a game I probably would have watched if Clemson, Georgia weren't on. So I like that big noon, them planting their flag for like, hey, this is our time slot, but not what
right. The other thing that is terrible about that is LSU, South Carolina, which is now going to be a fun game to watch, is also at 11 o'clock. Now,
Can you explain that to me, by the way?
Because they had already determined that kickoff time, and they didn't think it was going to be.
No, what I mean is this. Why? Now, I realize South Carolina upset Kentucky. LSU lost to USC. I'm a little stupefied as to why LSU South Carolina has the attention of the nation in College game day. I don't really get. I can pick other. I'm going to watch it, and I'm interested because, of course, I am. But I could pick other games here that I think.
Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it later this week because I do have some thoughts on it. But I do want to get to some stats.
Sorry.
First of all, I want to go back to Hollywood Williams for a second. All right, how about this from your guys over at BOL? Jalen Milroe has 3 passing plays of 40 yards plus this year. All of them are to receiver Ryan Williams. That's ridiculous. He is tied with Ohio State's Jeremiah Smith for the most receiving touchdowns by a freshman, and he's tied for second in the SEC for receiving touchdowns with 3. Again, this guy just continues, in my opinion, to shine. Now, I know we've only had 2 games, and I know they hadn't been the best competition, but I'm going to say this. If I can find a prop bet on FanDuel or wherever that Ryan Williams touchdown, I'm putting yes down.
Yeah, and he draws the flags because these college defenders are having a tough time defending Ryan Williams, which is nuts for his age. I think what's happened that has surprised me in terms of how good Ryan is quickly, Luke, is we're at game 3. This is now the biggest game of the year, the biggest challenge of the year. And what I didn't anticipate is there's a meeting happened either yesterday or today, in the football building, the offensive staff meeting where they're beginning to finalize a Wisconsin plan. And up at the very top of that page, it's going to say something like, got to get the ball to Ryan 6 or 8 times. Must do that. And I just never imagined. We've said on the show, Luke, I remember saying this. I said, by the end of the year, he's going to be one of the top 2 receivers on the team with Jeremy. What I didn't have was Ryan basically being the number 1 receiver going into game 3. But I really feel like we're there. You did. And I'm just because, putting that on a 17-year-old is crazy.
It is. And I'm going to make a bold prediction here because I've seen him do this in high school so much. At some point this year, he's going to wildcat it. He's going to go in the wildcat. Now, you say, why, when you got Jalen Milroe back there? I just think that it just depends. But I think that Ryan is probably more elusive than Jalen. And I think that that's something he can do. Maybe that's a crazy thought. Maybe it isn't. And again, with Jalen Milroe back there, you're like, hey, Luke, that's nuts. I'm just telling you, I've seen the kid run the wildcat, and he's ridiculous. So, and I think also would make everybody go, why are they using Ryan Williams in wildcat when they got Jalen Milroe? So
I wonder if he'll play some DB by his junior year. I mean, he might. I mean, does anyone doubt watching him play how good he would be at corner or nickel corner where he can be disruptive? Now, it might be a little light in the pants there, but Red Morgan's 170, 175 playing Husky. So I'm just saying, Devontae was a good DB. We heard Nick Saban talk about this recently. We saw a lot of Nick this week. Nick talked this week about how Devontae was one of the best DBs on the team, and we practiced him there. We just never needed it in a game. And we've always comped Ryan to Devontae. Just makes sense to me that they might take a look at that, down the road. You can't put it on him now.
A couple other just knick-knack things. Jahad Campbell leads Alabama with 20 tackles on the season.
He's been spectacular. He's having a great year. The NFL should kidnap him from Tuscaloosa.
Oh, he's gone. He's gone, Jimmy.
So much of his great plays. I mean, you question him like, okay, well, I know he can play in the box. I know he can rush the passer. He's making plays in coverage. I mean, he's dropping and having a significant impact on the outcome of the game. He's really spectacular.
How about this stat? All right. Keon Sabb, didn't have an interception, but he still ranks pretty highly nationally because he had 2 in that first game. How about this? Malachi Moore and James Smith have 2 breakups to share 4th place in the SEC for pass breakups. That's a pretty crazy stat.
Noted DB, James Smith. Whole defensive line played well, but special shout out to Tim Keenan. Totally dominant. Reminded me of Tim Keenan's game against Texas A&M last year, where he was also the best lineman on the field that night, even though A&M had 48 5-stars. Keenan was the best defensive lineman on the field that night in that stadium. And let me tell you, Keenan was just dominant against South Florida.
refresh my memory. Keenan and all the COVID stuff has screwed me up so bad. Can Keenan come back next year or no?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
gee.
And he might. And I'll say it this way. I don't say that Keenan's ready for the NFL, but here's the thing. He's not a pass rusher. Now, I say that coming off a game where you have 1.5 sacks, but he's not a pass rusher that the NFL is going to say. The NFL is going to see him as this is a run-stuffing interior tackle. Those guys typically aren't taken high. So I don't think Keenan will be getting day one grades. I don't think so. Maybe. I don't think so. If he's not getting day one grades, he can always come back. NIL's been a real game changer for day three guys, definitely. And even to some extent, some day two guys. So I'm not telling you guys Keenan's coming back. I'm just saying if you're one of the fans that sees him play, realize he's a junior or 2-year starter, you're like, oh, he's gone. 5 years ago, yeah. I don't think that's a shoe-in anymore.
All right, Jimmy, when we come back, we got some recruiting news, and I think a lot of it is going to make people very, very happy. But I want to tell you about Ibotta. I love Ibotta. I use it all the time, and it's just so helpful. I mean, look, it's just, it's a little pocket change you can build up just buying regular stuff. Like, if you're about to buy some fall clothes, or if you're getting your tailgate stuff ready, all that stuff, you can go to Publix or Walmart or wherever, and you can get cash back on these things. Look, it's a free app that lets you earn cash back every time you shop. Earn on hundreds of items from groceries to beauty supplies, even toys. You can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. The average Ibotta user earns over $256 per year. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip, that flight you've been eyeing, or a fancy dinner you've been craving. Other apps give you points that don't amount to much. With Ibotta, you earn cash back. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta, and use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app and start earning cash back and use LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. Look, trust me on this. Just go download it. Okay, IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store and use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. Just do it for us. If you never use it, so be it. But I think you will. Go download it. Use that code. You get $5 to start off with, and next thing you know, you're making some real money. So I think it's a big positive. You need to try out Ibotta. Okay, so Alabama had somewhat of a surprise visitor this weekend in Justice Terry. And this is a guy that, look, first of all, Ty Jackson, let's go ahead and throw this out there. He committed to USC this weekend. I thought Alabama had a puncher's chance in that one, and they probably did, but he went to USC and fell in love with the place for one reason or another, because, all defensive players love playing for USC. But whatever, I'm not faulting the kid. It is what it is. And so Alabama, meanwhile, welcomed in Justice Terry, who is probably the best defensive lineman in the country. And he's giving Alabama a serious look. Yeah, of course you favor Georgia in this battle, but I feel like Alabama's right there in it. And if Alabama can put on a good showing, and put on a good showing, not only just at the game, but in the environment against Georgia, and win that contest, I think that Alabama's got a great shot to get Justice Terry.
Yeah, I agree with everything Luke said there. And again, I would probably still have Georgia as the favorite. Here's what's a little different about Justice Terry. I know when you're talking about the best defensive lineman in the country and a 5-star that plays that position, let's be honest, in modern college football times, you're probably talking about a gigantic NIL situation. That's going to be the natural, fair assumption for a kid at that position, that highly rated. I don't think in this case it's that big of a thing, because he decommitted from USC, who has that reputation, of course, as a big NIL offerer. You got to beat Georgia for him. And frankly, I'm just in terms of perceived reputation nationwide, Georgia's no different than Alabama when it comes to the NIL. They're competitive. Market, whatever the market is, they'll do the market deals. That's what Alabama does. So I don't think this is a situation where you lose out NIL-wise because you wouldn't add another zero to the check, or whatever. I'm just saying that if it was Alabama was still fighting USC or one of the Ohio State, Miami, but this is Alabama versus Georgia. it's somewhat even there. Now, what you got to go up against here is just really home state school. I mean, you're beating Georgia for a Georgia kid that they want really badly. That's what makes this one difficult. But that's just my read from 500 miles away. There's no way to know what's really going on NIL-wise there. I'm just saying, when I hear 5-star defensive lineman, I'm just saying my first thought runs to, oh gosh, that's shopping in the Neiman Marcus aisle. But I don't think that's a roadblock here. You have to appreciate Alabama's effort here. Alabama's clearly trying hard, clearly has his attention, and that's a good thing. And as we know, recruiting's never over these days. He could go to Georgia and, end up in the portal one day. I mean, that's what happens with so many kids. He says Ty Jackson, I think, runs an even greater risk of that playing cross country, though. And let's see if his commitment to USC sticks. Justice Terry committed to USC. It didn't stick. Juju Lewis committed to USC. That may or may not stick.
Well, and at the same time, Caleb Downs was once considered a heavy lean. Justice Haynes, a heavy lean to Georgia. So, Alabama has pulled a rabbit out of the hat before. Yeah. One other recruiting note I want to throw out there. There's a new offer out, and credit to you guys over at BLL. Defensive lineman Christian Ingram, also from Georgia. This guy is a monster. He is huge. He's like 6'6", 280. And Georgia has offered him too. I haven't been able to find a profile on him. I guess he just doesn't really have one.
He's a late blooming emerge. Me and Luke talk about it all summer, right? When people are like, well, I guess recruiting's over. All the names are gone. They're not gone. There's always kids that emerge during their senior year. And that doesn't mean that like, hey, we found another 3-star. No, kids emerge who are big deals because they just develop late. And you see it happen in college, even to some extent see it happen in the NFL. But no, I'm glad Luke brought that up. Alabama has offered, off the top of my head, I'm just guessing here, Luke, I think Alabama's offered as many as 6 2025 guys since the senior season began. And, this isn't a deal. I'm just saying, I'm not so sure I wouldn't count Turbo Rogers as one of those, and I know he had an offer a long time ago. He's been committed to Alabama for a while, but I think Alabama's ramped up, Turbo's recruitment since the start of his senior season based on senior tape. So this is just commonplace. And this kid looks like, hey, I don't want to piggyback anybody's offers because we're Alabama. People should be piggybacking our offers. But an in-state defensive lineman that Georgia wants, that should have everyone's interest. Let's take a look then.
All right, buddy. That's going to do it for today's pod. We'll be back tomorrow with more. Until then, roll tide, everybody.
Roll tide.